Hello, everybody. You know what? I just got cut out there because I'm trying to send Ellis one more thing because I wanted to share an event with you all that's happening next week in Harlem for Mother's Day. We are doing what we're calling a Mother's Day celebration. We are celebrating and showering and honoring not only women who have had the honor of becoming mothers, but you know what? There is the journey of motherhood that does not always end successfully in having a live born baby. And oftentimes, when Mother's Day comes, it can be a source of depression, despair, and having gone through the traumatic process of having a pregnancy, going through. Some even have had stillbirths because their baby did not survive. But it doesn't mean that you're still not a mother in your own right. And so I want to honor all moms who have biologically become mothers. And you know what? We have a lot of spiritual moms out there, a lot of moms who have helped nurture and take care of people in their community, your moms too. So this month of May, there's a lot of things we're celebrating. We're celebrating mothers, but we're also celebrating, as many of you know, that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And because May is Mental Health Awareness Month, as well as the month that we celebrate and honor mothers, I wanted to talk today about Black maternal health care. Black maternal health care in America has been really a source of trauma for many women. There have been statistics, and I shared some in a little teaser earlier, that 700 people in America each year die from pregnancy-related complications. Or within the year following their pregnancy, they die. And then the other statistic that I wanted to share is that 50,000 people annually have unexpected outcomes from pregnancy-related complications throughout the year. And this is in America, where we are, if we utilize this term, I say this lightly, a developed country, right? A country that has the technology and the money and the means to have good healthcare for most of our citizens. However, we're suffering. Black women suffer the most. And many times we're finding that the suffering that we experience is simply because of the color of our skin, simply because when we show up in emergency rooms or labor and delivery, we're not given the same proper care that our counterparts are given. We have, and I'm going to share some information with you that really sort of highlights what's going on. So Black women in America are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from a pregnancy-related cause than white women. Furthermore, the death rates for infants born to even a highly educated professional Black woman or Black American, they're higher than white Americans who don't even go to high school. The American Medical Association has had a study that showed that Black women who live in affluent neighborhoods receive prenatal care starting in their first trimester. Their normal weight, so the women aren't even overweight in their pregnancies, and have advanced degrees. Again, advanced education, are more likely to die or have their baby die than white women in poor neighborhoods who have no prenatal care, who are obese, and who don't have high school diplomas. Now, first of all, let that sink in. That's a conversation that needs to be had, because a lot of times we have these understandings and notions that because we are educated, because we live in good neighborhoods, because we have good jobs and we're making money, that's not going to happen to me. That's not going to happen because I know my doctor, they know me at the hospital. But guess what happens? Sometimes it's a precipitous labor. You show up, you're out of town, you're at friends' homes, and you get rushed to the hospital because you're now gone into labor unexpectedly. And when you go into labor, where you go into labor really matters. I'm actually sitting right now in Alabama, in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm here for a conference. I'm speaking at a conference, and you all know that the color of my skin and my degree means nothing if something happens right now and I end up going to the hospital, right? There are things, there are obstacles that we have to face that are just different, and we need to talk about it. This is a problem. And so if you have any questions, you have any things that have happened to you, we would love to hear about it. Tell us where you're chiming in from. If you're joining us right now, I want to know where you're in from, where you're watching from, and have you had things that have happened to you during your pregnancy journey, during your delivery journey? We would really like to know about it, okay? So multiple factors contribute to the disparities that we're talking about today, such as a variation in the quality of healthcare. Some of us are dealing with underlying chronic conditions. But the other things that, we don't talk about and we're not able to sometimes pinpoint is the structural racism and the implicit biases that we're experiencing directly from healthcare workers or from hospital systems. And I want you to know that we know about this. We're talking about it. There's also a study that just came out that said that where there are more Black doctors that are participating and practicing, not only do Black people do better and live longer and get better care, but so do non-Black people. So the other brown, we talk about BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. The other people of color that are living in areas where we work and where we give care are benefiting, but so are our white counterparts. Why? Because we recognize that it's an important right to give quality care, despite the color of your skin, despite your gender, despite your sexual orientation or preference. We give good care because we have been traumatized and we understand. And many of us have gone through cultural competency certifying classes, but we also understand what cultural humility is. And cultural humility is just a term that recognizes that when we come into a room, we're not the only experts in the room, right? What you know about your care, what you know about what is going on with your body is important. And so we have to recognize that. So that's what it's about, to talk about cultural competency and talking about cultural humility. And this is what Black doctors tend to bring to the table. There's also information about, I'm going to share this again. Sorry about this. Information about how we are addressing social determinants of health. So outside of the racism inside of the racism and the biases, there's a lot of things that determine how we show up, how we live, and how we do well in the places that we work, the places where we live, the places where we practice, the places where we celebrate our religion, education systems, all of these things. And we call this our social determinants of health, right? And they prevent people, racial and ethnic minoritized people or marginalized groups, from having fair opportunities economically. Our physical health and our mental health is often affected. And then just the growth that we experience even within our neighborhoods, in our communities. So the consequences are that this racism is just a form of oppression, and it occurs and it is affecting our both mental and physical health. And for women who are, having children, who are experiencing trauma, who are experiencing racism while incubating this precious life form, there's lots of these stress hormones that's bathing these poor little infants. And so there's studies that show that it transfers that depression, that anxiety, that stress is being transferred across the placenta. And oftentimes, then our children are born into just a lot of trauma and a lot of stress. And so we got to start dealing with it. We got to start talking about it. And this is why my show is called Body, Mind, and Stress with Dr. Yolanda, because it's that stress that's affecting our bodies. It's affecting our minds. And guess what? When we're pregnant, ladies, it's affecting not just our bodies and minds, it's affecting our babies. There are studies that show that chronic stress is actually altering the axis, the neural development axis in the baby's brains. And many babies are born with an inability to regulate themselves. We're not sure how connected this might be to ADHD. We're not sure how connected this might be to depression and anxiety, but we definitely see higher instances of these types of disorders in babies that are born to mothers who experience a lot of stress and a lot of trauma during pregnancy. All right, so do we have any questions? Ellis, I just want to make sure that we're able to share. We have a flyer that I believe you might have that I sent to you that is about our event in Harlem. It's called the Harlem Mother's Day Celebration, and it's next Sunday, May 14th. And it's with Malcolm Meets Martin. It's the MMM. When I say we, who am I talking about? I'm so sorry. I am also, I serve as the Director of Health Equity and Community Impact for the Harlem Festival of Culture Foundation. And it's very exciting, the work that we're doing. I'm so excited to be a part of this. And we are part of the group that's bringing back the festival. There we are. That's our flyer. So you all are invited if you're in the New York area. If you're not, come on up. It's actually on Mother's Day. That's right. I am working on Mother's Day. My children are like, are you serious? And I am. They're going to be there too. But we're celebrating, we're honoring the mothers in the community, right? We're having a mother's shower. Lots of time we talk about having baby showers, but we want to shower moms with, we have things like pedicure and manicure station. I think we have like a mobile unit coming out for that. We have things like massage that's going to be out there, probably in the chair massage. We have food. It's all free. This is free, free, free. By the way, there's no money involved. Come on out. Hey, I see you, Lenore from Texas. I see you in here. But anybody who's going to be in the New York area, specifically in Harlem, 120th Street. I'm horrible at things like this. This is between Marcus Garvey Park and Malcolm X Boulevard. It's the organization that we're partnering with is Malcolm Meets Marcus. And that's because it's the Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X Boulevard corner block there. And so you guys are welcome to come out, to join us, and to be a part of this celebration, because we want to honor you. We want to honor moms. Do we have any questions? Anybody who, again, so there's a lot of stories that have been shared. And for HIPAA's sake, I try not to do too much sharing of other people's stories. But I'm going to tell you, for instance, about a colleague of mine. So I have a colleague who was a part of the a part of the Navigating a Triple Pandemic book series that I did. So in the pandemic, I wrote a book series, and it was about healthcare workers of color confronting racism in America, health disparities in medicine, and the trauma of COVID-19. And so you all know that some of the disparities that we talk about is heart disease. We're the number one sufferers. For us to be only 14% of the population, it's amazing that we account for about a quarter, almost 24 to 25% of heart disease. Well, what's crazy is white Americans make up 75% of the population. And guess what? they also make up about 24 to 25% of heart disease. So for us to be such a small fraction of the population, we account for as much heart disease as white Americans, who are 75% of the population. That's atrocious. And oftentimes, heart disease is connected to trauma and to stress, as well as things like obesity, smoking, sedentary lifestyles. We know that salt intake is something that we need to be careful of. But these are some of the chronic diseases that we're dealing with, and the disparities in health are not just our physical health. We have disparities in mental health. So we wrote this book, colleagues and I got together, and we wrote this book about how we, as Black doctors, Black healthcare workers, not just doctors, we had nurses, physician assistants, we had lots of pharmacists that were participating in this, that have participated in this series as well. I actually also did an educators edition. That one I'm really proud of. We had the attorney Benjamin Crump and his wife, Dr. Janae Crump. They wrote the foreword for that educators edition, really talking about that that pipeline to prison that happens when our education is not up to par and we have disparities. But going back to the first book in the series, volume 1, I had a colleague who works with me. So needless to say, she is a physician. I won't say what type of physician she is, because I don't want it to be narrowed down to who you know, to anyone might know who this person is, because there's so many physicians in the book, right? But she's a physician, and she and her husband had showed up to the hospital, and she was pregnant with her first baby. And so, being a physician, she was sort of given a little information. You know, her history was more extensive than most people, right? She was able to say, yes, my name is XYZ. I'm such and such weeks pregnant. These are the things that I have experienced in my pregnancy. These are the medications or supplements that I take. She was very thorough. And so, what she didn't tell them is that prior to finishing the residency that she had done and being the doctor that she is today, she had actually done an OBGYN residency for a short time before switching over. So she knew a lot about obstetrics and gynecology. And so in her labor and delivery process, she was quite informed. So as things were progressing along, she says, so there were some things that weren't going so well. And she was trying to tell her nurses and the doctor that was on call that what she was feeling was uncomfortable. What she was experiencing, she felt was not what she should experience. But she was trying to be polite and was saying, hey, this is how I'm feeling. This is the pain that I'm in. It feels like something's wrong. Well, she was ignored. Her husband started to, get a little angry. Our men and the folks in our lives get protective, but she sort of calmed him down and said, "Well, let's wait and see. Let's see what happens." But for several hours, she attempted to explain that she was having this discomfort. That this discomfort had turned into frank pain. And that she felt that there was something wrong, and they did not listen. So she went through several hours of improper care, quite frankly. And then her doctor showed up. She'd been in labor long enough, and it was the following day. And when her doctor showed up, all hell broke loose. Her doctor recognized that whatever it was that was going on hadn't been done correctly, reprimanded whoever, got it all straight. But the problem was, in the meantime, her stress levels, her heart rate, the baby's heart rate, the predicament that she had been put in simply because they would not listen to her and they would not adjust her care, really boiled down to not trusting her as a Black woman. Not hearing her as a Black woman say that she had pain and that something needed to be done differently. Not caring about her as a Black woman. And this story is so common when I talk to women about their history or their journey through pregnancy. We've had this happen so many times. We have a couple of women who will be on our panel next week. Very good friends of mine. One is actually to be candid, is my best friend. My best friend of over, oh gosh, over, this is 2024, so over almost 25 years. I mean, 35 years rather. We've been best of friends. She is my daughter's godmother. I'm her daughter's godmother, and she is actually one of the founders of the festival, the Harlem Festival of Culture. And on the foundation side, she's one of the co-chairs, right? And so she has her own story, and she'll be sharing her story with us next week. So I could probably give a little bit of that information since she'll be sharing that publicly. But her name is Nakoa Evans Hendricks. And Nakoa tells a story, and I was very much involved in how she was doing and what was going on with her journey to motherhood. But as she was trying to have a baby with her husband, Mr. Garrett Hendricks. Y'all remember I said that name because he's becoming famous. He's doing all kinds of movies and all kinds of films. So look out for Garrett Hendricks. But Nakoa and Garrett were trying to have a baby. And Nakoa's she was in her early 40s as this was happening. Actually started off in her late 30s. And she was having miscarriages. And obviously each loss of a baby is just devastating, right? And so, she would go through the whole process. They had to, she had to give herself certain hormones and things. And so it was a whole thing. Oh my God. I just want her to tell her story, and you'll hear her story if you're able to come out in next week, next Sunday. But she tells the story of how she was having these miscarriages, and she had several. And it wasn't until, and the doctors, mostly white, mostly male, were sort of just explaining that this is just sort of a process that many women just have to go through. You kind of have to suffer through this, and eventually you'll have a viable pregnancy and a baby. And of course, it was emotionally draining. It was definitely devastating each time. It got to the point where she didn't even want to say that she was pregnant because she did not trust that the baby was going to survive. So it became this thing that she didn't even talk about much. And it was horrifying. And so think about that, because I know many women have had this experience. Then there's all of this stress and the stress hormones that are being built up in your body, just going through that process. So those stress hormones are also affecting the ability to implant this embryo and grow the baby, because your stress hormones are also interfering with that. So finally, she had a conversation with a Black female OBGYN. And she brought up to her that there is a possibility of protein deficiency that she wanted to test her for, because she was aware of women who had this particular deficiency, who also had the experience of several miscarriages. And lo and behold, that was the problem. So guess what? This Black physician, this Black female physician, by the way, y'all know that we only make up 2% of the physicians in America. So we're unicorns, guys. So this Black physician, phenomenal, brilliant, empathetic Black woman said, I believe this might be going on. Let's test you for this. Found out that was exactly what was happening. And her next pregnancy resulted in my goddaughter, the beautiful, the amazing, the talented, intelligent Zuri Alicia Evans Hendricks. So Zuri is, I don't know, 10 or 11 now. I'm getting old. She's getting old. And she is the result of having had an empathetic, competent physician, Black physician say, hey, let's test and see if there's something else that's going on. But this was after several disappointing and devastating and emotionally tormenting experiences of miscarriages. And these are the things that we're talking about. Black maternal health, there's a spectrum of things that happen. There's the stuff that's happening before you even get pregnant. That's a part of racism, and really just a no concern for who we are or what might be happening with our bodies. And then there's all the stuff that happens from the first trimester through the third of the biases and the structural racism and the stress and the anxiety that you go through. Then you show up to the hospital and you deal with labor and delivery and how people treat you and what goes on. And then after that, there's obviously what happens as a young mom, especially if you're a young single mom. There are ways that people look at you and treat you and resources that you can't get or can't get access to. There's just so much that happens. And so, again, I'm here to say thank you. I'm here to honor our mothers, honor our Black women, and recognize that Black maternal health care is something that we all have to work harder at making better, making it accessible, making it affordable, and making it sustainable in communities that care and that will go that extra mile. All right. Do we have any questions, anything that our audience has brought to our attention? I am halfway looking at my screen to see who's here, who's tuning in. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I saw that somebody was tuning in from Texas. I'm still waiting to see if anybody's tuning in from New York, because I want to make sure that y'all are out there in New York at our event on May 14th. Again, it's 120th Street between Marcus Garvey Park and Malcolm X Boulevard. I really want y'all to come out because, again, it's free food. We have prizes. We have massages. We have manicures and pedicures. We have games for kids. Definitely bring your children out, face painting and games. So there's a lot to experience and to participate in if you come out for our our Celebrating Mothers program that we're doing. Again, it's Harlem's Mother's Day celebration. There we go. And again, it is between 11 and 4 on Sunday, May 14th, which is Mother's Day. So if they didn't take you out to brunch, if they didn't take you out to lunch, if they didn't have something that was already planned. And the reason we did this is because, again, people are like, on Mother's Day, people are going to be out already. Guess what? Everybody doesn't have that opportunity. Everybody doesn't have the honor to be celebrated. What happens a lot of times is we have young kids, and our young kids, I remember when my kids were small, the most they could do is, if they were in school, they might make a little card for you or do something for you at school. And a lot of times our teachers, bless their hearts, the teachers for young kids will help children make something to take home for their parents. But when you have small children, you don't get an opportunity to go out and be pampered or be cared for, or that someone gives something to you or gives back to you. So we are here, Harlem Festival Culture, presented by, I didn't even mention this, Northwell Health. Northwell Health is our sponsor for that particular program. So we're going to have Northwell Health, which is the largest healthcare provider for New York State. They're going to have some of their doctors out there that are going to be talking, able to give information. They're going to have pamphlets. They're going to have their the ambulance set up for the kids to kind of go in and see and have fun on. There's all kinds of things for them to do. So I really want you guys to come on out. Let's see. So if we don't have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and share with you. We'll talk about care, because one of the reasons I started this show is because so many people are not recognizing that the care that we place into our bodies, the care that we place for our emotions, for just our spiritual selves, It matters because when we're not caring for ourselves, we're constantly absorbing or assuming trauma from stuff that happens in our own lives, but oftentimes it's stuff that's happening in other people's lives. How does that happen? It depends on what you do for a living, but many of us are absorbing what we call vicarious trauma. If you're a social worker, if you're a teacher, if you're a nurse, a doctor, a firefighter, if you're a police officer, you know what? You're absorbing all kinds of trauma from the people that you work with. But guess what? It doesn't matter if you can just be someone who works at, and not just be as in though it's a difference in station, but if you're working with people anywhere at any intersection, the front desk, answering phones, there's sometimes that people come to you with so much anger and so much stress that you sometimes find yourself absorbing it. And when you're absorbing it, how are you releasing it? What are you doing to release that? Do you use breathing exercises? Are you, uh, investing in things like massage therapy? Are you? I do a lot of meditation. Meditation is one of my favorite things to do. Transcendental meditation is something that I talk about. In fact, I'm here in Birmingham today, talking at the International Peace Conference, and I'm really talking about how transcendental meditation is a form of self care that actually adds to your life in so many ways because you're able to. It deals with anxiety. It deals with depression. It deals with. There's three organs of the body that cortisol, which is the stress hormone, particularly attaches to. One is your liver, and so often in stress, your glycogen is convert it to glucose. That's for that fight or flight because you got to keep going. Again, when it's brief and it's just because of excitement, it's fine. But it's when it's chronic stress, like that toxic stress, that constant bathing in cortisol. If your liver is constantly changing that glycogen into glucose, guess what? You're now in this process where that increased glucose your body's seeing has to be absorbed, has to be processed with insulin. That's just set up for diabetes, right? Diabetes is a stress related health condition. That's why so many people who have diabetes, their numbers are out of whack when they're stressed because that's what's happening. That glycogen is getting converted into glucose, and that glucose can only be processed by insulin. And now we're becoming insulin resistant because our bodies are pumped full of insulin all the time. And the insulin isn't working. Or the people who don't even have enough insulin have to give themselves exogenous, which is shots, have to give themselves insulin that isn't even that they don't have because they're not responding to their own. So that's what's happening with that particular organ. Then there's the stomach. You all know that in your fight or flight response, when you need to go get out of there because whatever's coming after you, your stomach stops digesting. It doesn't have time for that. Digestion is a thing that happens when you're relaxed, when you're calm, when your body is, not under siege or under stress. That's what happens. That's when your body absorbs those great good nutrients. That's given that you're eating good foods, right? We can always talk about the fact that it's the foods that you're often eating when you're stressed that's not good for you, right? Lots of sugar, lots of trans fats, lots of processed foods. That's the stuff that's not good for you. But guess what? Your body's not absorbing most of it anyway, not the good nutrients as it is. So what your body tends to do is whatever it's not absorbing and using, it stores it as fat. So here we go. That's your precursor. You're set up for obesity. That's where cortisol is kicking in and causing you to become more and more obese. That subcutaneous fat is not going to go, and it's real stubborn and hard to get rid of. And then the last organ I talk about when I give this talk often is the vessels, our blood vessels. So cortisol is responsible for clamping down those vessels. And when those vessels are clamped down, and that's because that blood needs to go to the most important parts, the muscles and the brain. It has to go to the things that need to get us out of the situation. But guess what? Chronic cortisol, chronic stress hormones, your vessels stay clamped down. And that means you get high blood pressure, right? This is where hypertension comes in. One of the reasons I started doing my annual heart health awareness event, Dr. Yolanda's red carpet affair, was so I could address heart disease. Because I said it earlier in the show, heart disease is the number one killer of all Americans, but it is disproportionately affecting Black people. And it is because of this very thing we're talking about, all of the stress that we are under, all those stress hormones like cortisol clamping down on those vessels. We are experiencing hypertension, we're experiencing strokes, we're experiencing heart attacks like never before. When we talk about heart disease, we die at a younger age than any other ethnicity. 40% of African Americans have uncontrolled hypertension. Hypertension is the silent killer. You've heard that term. Do you know why we call it the silent killer? It's because by the time you find out and actually have active symptoms that you're aware of, you already have irreversible heart damage. That's why it's the silent killer. So we have to get better at addressing our stress. We have to get better at recognizing that everything that we're doing is not really self-care to reduce stress. Some things are just fun, right? Some things are just nice to get your nails done and get your hair done. But that's not always actually what we consider self-care that's lowering our stress. We got to talk about the things that's lowering our stress. Meditation, lowering our stress. Okay, breathing exercise, lowering our stress, is lowering that cortisol levels. Getting a good amount of sleep, that's lowering our stress, lowering those cortisol levels. Eating healthy foods, that's lowering our stress, lowering our cortisol levels. Things like, you may think I only want to talk about TM. No, acupuncture. Acupuncture is one of those things. It actually lowers stress. It lowers cortisol levels, right? So there are a lot of activities and things that you can do. Exercise. Here's the great thing about exercise. I got my seven miles in this morning. I was able to get in, do my Peloton, as well as do a 2-mile run. That is my regular routine. I have to get my exercise in. I have to get my transcendental meditation. I meditate twice a day, 20 minutes a day. But this is a part of my self-care. I exercise, I get my meditation in, and guess what? I'm always eating properly and drinking my water. Like this, my water stays with me everywhere I go. I'm in Birmingham. I usually have a half gallon that I fill up twice a day. But when I travel, I bring the smaller one and I drink 3 to 4 of these each day, right? I'm on number 2 already because I did my exercise this morning. I drank a whole one and now I'm halfway through this second one. Usually by this time of day, I will have finished the second one. But I was on a panel. Now I'm doing this. But as soon as I get out of this call with you all, as soon as I'm done with this show, I'll finish this up and I'm going to fill it up again before I head off to lunch. When you're eating properly, that is actually self-care. This body that we're given, I talk to a lot of you all that are Christians, right? I'm a Christian. I'm a minister in my church. I went through Spirit of Faith Bible Institute 3 years. And we often talk about being good stewards of all kinds of things, of our money, our homes, our families. But the first thing God gave us to be a good steward over was our bodies. And how do you be a good steward over your body? You put the right things in. Y'all have these luxury cars and you are so diligent about putting good fuel, the optimal fuel, the luxury cars with the good fuel. You guys make sure you get that high octane, whatever it is. Well, the question is, are you doing that for your body? Because if you're giving yourself foods that are not high in sugar, especially processed sugar, that aren't processed with lots of preservatives. Some things can be organic. Everything doesn't have to be organic. So there's a whole concept of what needs to be organic and what doesn't. And if you've ever gone, I don't, I'm in Birmingham. I'm not in my office. Usually at this point, I'm showing you the book that I wrote about soul food, right? Soul. I talk about soul food. People are like, what do you mean by soul food? How can soul food be good for you? Because we all know what we mean by soul food, right? It's that food with all that sugar and all them trans fats and all. But that's not what I mean. My definition of soul, my book is Dr. Yolanda's Soul Food Therapy. And soul for me is an acronym. And soul stands for savory, organic, unprocessed living food. These are the foods that help save our lives, right? What am I talking about when I say savory? You don't need to flavor everything with sugar and salt. Please recognize that there are herbs and there are things that we can flavor our foods with that are actually good for us, that are medicinal, right? So I talk about lots of different herbs. I talk about rosemary and thyme and sage and basil, things like turmeric, right? Turmeric is anti-inflammatory. I talk about ginger and cayenne pepper. There's so much stuff that we can really put in our food that doesn't just taste good, but is good for us. And again, I talk about the things that are best to be organic. If it's made with a lot of water, then the more organic, then it's probably best to get it organically, because these foods that are made with lots of water absorb a lot of the pesticides from the soil. And so it doesn't taste so great. I remember having this conversation. I told people, I thought I didn't like celery. I didn't like the taste of celery. Well, it's because what I was tasting was the bitterness that I was tasting in some celery was the pesticides. When I began to eat organic celery, it was sweet. I really like the taste. So for me, there's certain things that I buy organically and other things that if it has a tough rind on it, you're probably okay. Oranges, grapefruits, things that have, but again, apples have a very thin skin. So it's probably best to get them organically. Again, bananas have thick skin. So there's all kinds of pineapple, thick skin. There's a lot of things that, that doesn't, that rule isn't for everything. So there's some things that you'll want to read up on, but that's a quick rule of thumb. And then living. What's living food? There's some foods that we make that when in the process of making them, we're literally overcooking, killing the food so that we no longer have nutrients that are viable for our bodies. So the first thing that comes to my mind are greens. Anything that's green. When I say greens, I mean spinach, kale, mustard, all the types of greens, collard. And I grew up in a family where when you would make these things, let's just take kale. It would be made in this fluid, whatever, water, you're boiling it to the point where all of the nutrients are actually in the liquid. A lot of us call that pot liquor, right? It could be drank after you eat the greens and stuff. You can actually drink it. People who had colds or who was sick, or they would just drink it for preventive care. It is mostly because we're taking all the nutrients out of the actual greens. So one of the things I talk about is just sauteing until it's a bright green. That means you still have the nutrients. If you're making broccoli, it should be a bright green by the time you're done with it. It should still have a little crunch or crisp to it. If you're overcooking it, you're pretty much killing it and taking all the nutrients out of it. And I know sometimes people are like, well, it tastes better when it's softer or whatever. That's fine. That's something that you might have been accustomed to, but you may want to work on it. That's just my 2 cents. I'm just going to give you that. That's for free. So that's soul food, savory, organic, unprocessed living food. But the way we eat, the foods that we eat really do matter. And it's a part of our self-care. So exercising, eating right, getting sleep, participating in certain things, activities like meditation, breathing, acupuncture, massage. These are things that are actually what I would call self-care because they're really replenishing you and helping you decrease these stress hormones that we're talking about. And I particularly talk about cortisol. What are some things that make it worse? Alcohol, not getting a lot of rest, high sugar meals, certain preservatives. There's a lot of things that you wanna start looking at and thinking about, and things that you can you because these are the things you have control over. And then not getting exercise. One of the things I was saying was exercise not only lowers cortisol, but it increases the good hormones. So that's actually buffering some of the other things that you might be experiencing. So these are the great things to do. These are ways that you can participate and practice self-care. And then I'm going to end with what we do, what I try to do once a month is give you some feedback, some kind of an activity, right? So I came up with this thing called Dr. Yolanda Playing for Keeps. And so I go through my deck of cards and I give a different card each day. There's 4 different things. There's activities that you can do. There's stuff that you can do for your self-care that's like love up on yourself. Those are the heart cards. The activities are the spades. There's intellectually things that you can do. That's self-care. That's the club card. And then the diamond is usually something spiritually that you can do. And that's what that represents. So today I shuffled my deck and I pulled up the Queen of Hearts. So we have the Queen of Hearts. Well, this I already explained how the hearts are self-care, the diamond is spiritual, and then there's a joker that's going to be in there. But I think I sent you the Queen of Hearts. And if I didn't, I can read it myself. So the Queen of Hearts that I pulled up is this week, I want you to buy yourself a small token of appreciation or gratitude. But guess what? The one caveat is this thing that I want you to buy yourself to appreciate yourself or honor yourself this week can't be food. Anything but food. It doesn't even have to be expensive. It just has to be something that you're honoring yourself with. But one of the things I try to get away from is associating treats, which is a treat for yourself, with food. I'm a pediatrician, and sometimes parents will say, "Oh, you got shots today. We gotta get a shot." Okay, well, after you get the shot, I'm gonna take you to get ice cream, pizza, whatever. And what happens then is this kid grows up to start believing that treating themselves is connected to eating. So I want us to kind of get away from that. And so the only stipulation for this is if you buy yourself some token of appreciation this week, then it needs to be anything but food. I'm going to share this card with you guys. And it's going to be, here we go. I'm going to share this, Ellis. All right. So it's the custom of gift giving has an important purpose. It's appreciation. And in general, we give people gifts to show them that we are grateful for them and we value the role that they play in our lives. Likewise, gifting yourself a token of appreciation is a way to show yourself that you value you. Right? This is what this is all about. So the gift can be something small, like an accessory that you've been thinking about for a while, a new set of sheets to spruce up your bedroom. I love some good sheets, y'all, because it really does improve your quality of sleep. You can give yourself flowers or a plant to liven up your main living room or your office or even your bedroom. Getting in that good oxygen from plants, that's something I've talked about before. That actually is increasing your oxygen and decreasing the carbon monoxide that you're putting out, carbon dioxide that you're putting out. And it freshens up and enlivens your spirit. So plants and flowers are good for that. The goal is just to give yourself something that makes you feel special. Again, not food. Because too often we consume calories as a treat. And then we regret it later. And then we have to put out that extra work to undo the damage. All right. So I want y'all to do something special for yourselves. I want you to make it make it something that, oh, do I need to stop share? Is this okay? This is what y'all was saying. But I want you to make it something good for you. You can even share it with someone. You can get something for the household if you want. But I want you to appreciate yourself this week. What is today? Today is also Cinco de Mayo. So happy Cinco de Mayo to all of our friends who are celebrating the emancipation of Mexico. I know I'm probably going to get out here and celebrate with some friends that are here in Birmingham, Alabama. There's a nice little Mexican restaurant right next to this Westin Hotel. So I'm going to celebrate today. One of the reasons I made sure I got in that gym this morning and I made sure I'm drinking plenty of water is because I already know what Cinco de Mayo can mean for the friends that I have, at least. So I want to say happy Cinco de Mayo, but I also want to say a pre-happy Mother's Day to all of you out there, to our biological mothers, to our spiritual mothers, to the wonderful women in our lives that have played any special role in helping us, our church mamas, you know who you are, those who have helped guide us, who have helped nurture us, who have helped when we were just in need. I lost my mother in medical school. And so there are such great women that play this role for me in my life. Two of the women I want to definitely shout out is my aunt, which is Dr. Michelle Bell, who is definitely a surrogate mom to me. So happy Mother's Day. And then my bestie's mom, because she is really like my mom too, Miss Lenora Clark Evans, who has been mama to me for over 35 years, who is grandmama to my babies. So thank you so much for all that you do, for all that you continue to share with not just me, but with my children and with our whole community. And all of those women out there who are sharing these things with people in your neighborhood, in your community, and with the world, loving up on folks and nurturing folks and educating folks, we appreciate you today. All right. So that's my show. That's my time. This has been Mind, Body, and Stress with Dr. Yolanda. I'm so happy to be back. Next week or month rather is June. And of course, we're celebrating Father's Day. And so our show, which is the first Friday of the month, this is sad that I got to look this up. I believe it's June 9th. It's June 2nd. The first Friday of the month is June 2nd. And we will be talking about Black men and mental health. Yes, this is Mental Health Awareness Month, but we're actually going to, because we talked a little bit about it with women, we're going to do the same thing next month, and possibly have a guest on the show. But Black men and mental health is our topic for next month. Again, June 2nd at 1:00 Eastern Standard Time here on blackdoctor.org. So please tune in. Hopefully you got something out of this. Do something special for yourself this week. Buy yourself a little token. Doesn't have to be a lot of money, but something that's for you, something that gives something back to you, but it can't be food. All right. So thank y'all for tuning in. And that is my time. Thank y'all.